Taylor Elwood here, and welcome to the latest episode of Magical Experiments Podcast. Today, I want to talk about how to troubleshoot your emotions in magic, your magical practice, because a lot of times we will have emotions come up in relationship to whatever's happening in our lives. And one of the things that can happen is that our emotions can derail the magical workings that we're doing because of what we're experiencing in the moment. And I think when we look at a given magical working, it can be really helpful to get some context around, like, oh, okay, there's something going on here that may be getting in the way of, me effectively doing magic. Like, if you, for example, had an experience where you felt really shut down in the moment, and you've kind of felt like, oh man, I feel really shut down today. I don't know how to respond to the situation, that can derail your magical work quite a bit. A lot of times when we're feeling shut down, it's because we have emotions that are front and center in what is happening in our experience. And these emotions are normal to feel and experience. But when they get in the way of us being able to do anything, it's usually because there's something that needs to be expressed and felt, and yet it's what it's doing is it's taking over the totality of our being and our identity. Now, one of the things that I found is that just in my own experience around emotions, is that sometimes I can feel emotions really strongly. And when I feel them really strongly, it can become really easy to overly identify with them. I've definitely sometimes identified with them to the point that I've kind of let them call the shots. And that's not always been the best move on my part, but I think this is a normal human experience. Welcome, Sheena. Glad to have you here. So, I think the first thing that we can do is kind of recognize in our magical work that emotions are going to play a factor. I mean, emotions, when I think about emotions, this is almost kind of cliche at this point, but I think of energy equals motion, right? Or energy in motion. Hello, Nick. Welcome. Glad to have you here. And so if I have these emotions coming up, they are going to represent a kind of motion that is coming into my magical work. And that motion is going to play a role in how basically what I do or don't do in terms of the magical actions that I take. I'll use an example of like fear as an example. Fear is an emotion that we all feel. Um, and under the right circumstances, fear can be a motivator for action. And other circumstances, fear can just shut us down and can get us into a place where we're feeling paralyzed. Now imagine that in context to your magical working. You've gone and you've decided you're going to do a magical working here, and you're going to do it for the context of creating some kind of change in your life, but then you feel fear come up around what you're doing. Well, that emotion is telling you something right then and there. And it may also be getting in the way of your magical working because of what it's doing. So let's kind of dissect what's happening here with the emotion and the magical working. And if you have any comments or questions or anything like that, feel free to drop those in the chat. I do keep an eye on it as we're going through. Let's say you're doing a magical working and you do have an experience of fear come up in your life. Now you have a few different options, but for the sake of argument, let's just say that what ends up happening, because we're talking about troubleshooting here, is that the fear comes up and it basically causes you to short circuit and you're not able to do the magical working. At that point, we could say, well, the fear is the problem. The fear is the problem, and that's basically what's getting in the way of the magical working. I, however, would I actually recommend looking at the fear as a symptom. So when I troubleshoot magical workings, whether it's my own or other people's workings, a lot of times what I like to look at is I like to look at the whole picture and diagnose kind of what's going on. And so I would look at fear and I would say, well, what is that fear signaling to you about whatever it is that you're trying to do? Now maybe you're doing this magical working as a reaction to a situation in your life and you're trying to fix something or you're trying to get an outcome that's going to lead to a better situation for yourself or you're trying to do something else. Okay, fair enough. But what if that fear is a symptom that is basically saying, "Oh, there's some kind of internal resistance here," or "There's something going on which is getting in the way here, and it's something that you haven't been paying attention to." This can be when it can be this can be useful when we look at our emotions as kind of like diagnostic tools of sorts to start examining, well, what is happening here? What is going on? Why is this coming up so sharply or so presently? Welcome, Donna. Glad to have you here. Again, if you have any questions or comments, folks, feel free to drop those in the chat. I love responding and appreciate it. So your fear, in this case, kind of getting back to the matter at hand, could be something that you can use to diagnose, like, well, what is going on around this magical working, or what's going on in my life? Because chances are that fear that you're feeling is related to whatever you're doing the magical working around. Unless you just suddenly feel a sharp thing of fear because of something else entirely different, most times, when we have emotions come up in a magical working, it's related to what the magical working is about. Now, the fear could represent a lot of different things. It could be a limiting belief, like I'm not going to be able to do this, or I don't have what it takes, or I'm not enough. How many of us have felt that way before? I know I have at different points in time. And recognizing that and recognizing, okay, here's some programming that's coming into play can be really helpful for exploring, okay, well, where's this coming from? And why is this situation bringing that up into the magical working? The other way I might look at an emotion, like fear in this context, though, is what is the fear driving me towards? Is it driving me toward taking like an action, or is it driving me toward paralysis, and why? And if there is a reason that it's driving me one way or the other, is that actually useful or helpful? And on the surface, we might say, well, paralysis isn't all that useful. Like if you're caught up in fear and you're kind of paralyzed, like that's not going to help you. And here's where I would say, well, let's again take a look at at the actual symptom and what the symptom is signaling to us. What is it telling us? What is it indicating? Because understanding what it's indicating is going to go a long way toward helping us understand what we need to change or transform in order to execute the magical working. Anytime I troubleshoot my own magical workings or I troubleshoot someone else's magical workings, one of the things that I really find is useful is to get curious about what's getting in the way, what the problem is. And the reason is because that curiosity is going to help you really get to the heart of what is going on. It's going to help you understand what is not working and why. And it may end up helping you improve your skills as a magician. And when we don't use those skills, when we kind of just get all frozen or we just kind of write off something and dismiss it out of hand, or we try to suppress it or do something else with it, what we're actually doing is we're doing a disservice to the magic and to ourselves, because what we're essentially ignoring is very crucial information that can help us. Now, I've used fear as an example, but let's use let's use a couple of other examples. Another example that I would use would be depression. Let's say you're trying to do a magical working and you're feeling really depressed. Well, one, that depression right there is signaling something very valuable to you. It's saying that you need to rest. A lot of times people treat depression as, again, something to be cured and fixed. And sometimes depression is grief. Sometimes depression is, I need to rest. Sometimes depression is, I need to slow down. we're often what I often notice in regards to people who practice magic is, we're in such a hurry to fix things, to solve problems, to make things happen like that, and that's great. And yet we also need to have a season for the times when things aren't working out as well as we'd like, or when there is some grief, or when there is something else going on in our lives that needs to be addressed. And so allowing ourselves to slow down and to say, okay, I don't have to do anything right now. I can give myself permission to just go slow can be a really crucial and important skill to cultivate. So we need to treat our emotions when they come up in magical workings as signals, as signalers that indicate something important to us. And at the same time, we can also treat our emotions as fuel. One of the other things that I will often say is like, take your doubt, take your anxiety, take anything else, and turn it into fuel for your magical working. And what I mean by that is, okay, you're having this experience, you're having this emotion, it's there. Well, if you don't know what to do with it, then turn it into fuel for your magical working. Feed it into the magical working itself. Let it fuel and direct and send out the magic that needs to be sent out. Because when you're doing that, it is going to help you transform the situation. Instead of letting it just stay there and be in the way, turn it into an active agent that transforms your life. This can be a really important skill to cultivate that, again, is not something I always see done in magical workings. Using the wholeness, the totality of our being as part of a magical working and drawing on like what is here in the moment can be one of the best skills that you can apply to your magical working. And this applies to any magical system or tradition. You can have a very formalized system of magic and you can still find a way to say, okay, here's this thing that's happening in the moment. It doesn't necessarily fit in the system, but I can take it and apply it to this magical working. I can apply that anxiety, that fear, that doubt, that happiness, that joy. And yes, I've included happiness and joy. Maybe we feel an experience of happiness or joy as well. That kind of seems easy. It's like, well, that would never get in the way of a magical working, and it probably wouldn't get in the way of a magical working. And even so, we can take that experience as well and apply it in our magical works. So these are just some of the things that I think about, like in regards to like troubleshooting something, is like how do we take the wholeness of the experience itself and make it part of our magical working and at the same time get curious about it so that we can explore it in further depth. Because the reality is, we are human beings, we have emotions, we have experiences that occur in our lives. And when we approach our magical work from a place of ignoring those things, what we end up doing is we fundamentally deny an essential part of ourselves that would actually enhance our magical working. We try to push down an experience, if we try to suppress it or ignore it or pretend it's not there, we're actually putting effort against ourselves and against the moment that we're in. And so we're actually creating resistance and friction toward executing the magical working. If you're going to do something, go all in, because that all inness is going to naturally create a better path toward transforming possibility into results. All right, that's it for today. Thanks for checking this out. And if you have any comments or questions, feel free to drop those below. And also check out my class, How to Troubleshoot Your Magic, which I will include a link to below, which walks you through my whole diagnostic process and system for um, doing magical troubleshooting. And it's something I've recently revamped. As I'm making updates to everything. So you're curious about it, I'll actually pop it into the chat here for the live folks. Go check it out. And thank you so much for being here. Have a great day.